What's up, you guys? This is One Classic Gamer here, and I've kind of waited on doing this video because I wanted to wait until this movie had been out, at least for the weekend, to give my thoughts on it. Because if there's one thing that I know about in my experience of doing movie reviews and TV show reviews and all that, it's that if I typically don't like something or I'm disappointed with something that a majority of people love and I give my thoughts on it when like the movie first comes out, people are going to look at those good reviews and they're going to look at people like me and they're going to be like, "Well, what the fuck? You know, why are you a fucking hater? Why are you on the hater bandwagon?" Um yeah, this isn't really going to be a review per se. This is going to be more of like my thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy 2, by the way, which has been released this weekend. And like I said, I wanted to wait because I've found that when I put something like this up, like when the movie first comes out, or like when the episode is first aired of a TV show or whatever, and I don't like it and I review it, people usually hate on me for it. So that's annoying. And also, a lot of the times it is kind of my fault too, because when I'm disappointed with something, I typically don't really give legit reasons for why I didn't like this particular TV show or movie or whatever. I just sort of ramble on and curse a lot. I'm like, no, it sucked. And it does make me sound like a hater, so I don't blame people. So I'm going to try to give my thoughts on this movie and why surprised it disappointed me and why I wasn't impressed with it. Now, there are going to be spoilers, so if you haven't seen this movie, I'd recommend you go and watch it. I mean, it's Marvel, so there's still things about this movie. You're gonna find out in this review. There's still things about this movie that I enjoyed, but in my opinion, it's not the best Marvel movie in the world. So yeah, go watch it before you see this video. But I mean, as I've already let on, I didn't enjoy this movie. I enjoyed this movie, but I was disappointed in this movie. And honestly, I'm, you know, I was really excited to see this movie because I love the first Guardians of the Galaxy. The first Guardians of the Galaxy was one of my favorite Marvel movies because it was so detached from all the other Marvel movies. It was just unique and fresh, and the characters were just awesome and hilarious, and the writing was great, the story was great. It was just a great movie altogether. But what I'm starting to notice with these Marvel movies, since this is like the 15th Marvel movie now, what I'm starting to notice is that the people behind like the making of these movies, um, I wouldn't really say they're running out of ideas. It's more like I wouldn't really say they're lazy either. They're getting lazy. It's more like they're having. To me, it seems like sometimes with these Marvel movies, sometimes these Marvel movies have more trouble um, telling their stories in interesting ways, like new ways. Because a lot of the times you'll have a Marvel movie like Civil War, which is really good because it focuses on the Avengers and them having to suffer their consequences for all the damage they've caused and all the people they've killed. And you have movies like Deadpool, which is a really good origin story. But then you have movies like this movie, where since we've already had one movie focusing on the characters, um, instead of focusing more on the character, which this movie actually does focus on its characters quite a bit, but instead of, you know, developing them in interesting ways, this movie follows such a lazy structure of having many scenes where characters just sit down and explain things to us. There's so many heavy exposition scenes in this movie where characters just tell us things. It's like in The Walking Dead when characters are fighting each other And the way they get out of that dispute is they decide to tell him their life story, like, oh, my wife, and then the other character feels bad for that character because he told him his life story. It's just, there's a lot of exposition in this movie, a lot of scenes where characters sit down and things are just lazily explained to us. And, I'm not gonna lie, one thing this movie does do really well, it does, like, develop a lot of the Marvel characters really well. The scenes between Yondu, like, the scenes with Yondu were really good, and the scenes between him and Rocket, particularly that one scene where you see the parallels between him and Rocket, is a really good scene. And a really powerful scene is the scene at the end where he sacrifices himself, and then like Star-Lord is like, he's like right there, like freaking out, like no, and he's like grabbing his face like a father would, like with his son. And those are really powerful scenes. But then you have like the scene with Yondu where Yondu's in prison with Rocket Raccoon, and he's just explaining to him, I used to be blah 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 blah, part of this blah 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 blah. You have a lot of scenes like that in this movie. And unfortunately, those are pretty annoying. I mean, I typically don't mind exposition if it's very few. Like, if there's only like one heavy exposition scene in the movie, I don't care. But I'm a screenwriter, so I know this sort of thing. I write scripts now, and I'm learning about it, and they should find more interesting ways to tell. There should be more of an interesting, less lazy way for them to tell that type of stuff. Like, there isn't, like, heavy exposition scenes like that just bother me in movies when there's so many of them, and this movie has so many heavy exposition scenes. And this movie's biggest mistake is it doesn't 100% further the relationships between all the Guardians. It isn't focused on them. It focuses way more on the villain. And Marvel movies have typically not been good with their villains, and this is one of the worst villains I have ever seen in a Marvel movie. I did not fucking give a shit about Kurt Russell whatsoever in this movie. I really did not. Ego Living Planet, I don't fucking care. I mean, the focus shouldn't be so heavy on the villain. It should be more on the main characters. I understand that this is Peter's dad, so, they have to make a big deal about it. But it was so heavily focused on the villain throughout the entire movie. And, when you do see Kurt Russell, it is decent. But then once he disappears and becomes, like, the planet, at that point I was watching it and I was just like, okay, what the fuck is this? The CGI for him, the face and the hands was just so bad, in my opinion. And this movie has great visuals. I love the world building in this movie, but the effects for that, the third act of this movie had some pretty bad effects, in my opinion. And yeah, I mean, I would have been fine if they would have kept with normal Kurt Russell, but once he, like, becomes the planet and they're fighting him on the inside and, like, the core of the planet, they completely lost me, and I was just like, this is fucking stupid. I'm gonna be honest, I just didn't like it. I mean, I know it's Marvel, I know it's Guardians of the Galaxy, but even in these movies, my suspension of disbelief can only go so far until I'm watching it and I'm like, this is stupid. So, I did not like how they focused so heavily on the villain. Like, he has so much development, especially when he's just gonna get killed in the end. Like, he has so much development. And this movie was filler, in my opinion. Because Captain America, like, Civil War or whatever it's called, Captain America. Infinity War is coming out. I don't know when it's coming out. And the Guardians are going to be with the Avengers now. So it's like, this movie just felt like filler to me. That's what this movie felt like. There's just so much filler. Now, I did say there were good things about this movie. Yeah, there were. The comedy is still gold in this movie. A lot of the scenes with Groot and Raccoon and just everybody were just great. I loved the comedy in this movie. The writing is still pretty damn good. The main characters, I like them a lot. The visuals are great. Um, and a lot of there are moments where as lazy as they are with the exposition, there are a lot of moments that do, develop the characters more. Like, there's a scene between Gamora and her sister where they're fighting, and then they stop fighting just to like argue. And I forgot what her sister's name is. By the way, I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of her sister. But Gamora's talking to her. Gamora's like, "All I ever wanted to do was fucking win and impress like Thanos." And then she goes like, "Well, all I ever wanted was a sister." And they just stop talking, and there's like a moment where you feel it, and you're like, "That's pretty good. Like, you got me, Marvel." Those moments are really good, but sadly, there's very few of those moments because this movie focuses so heavily on the villain and the shit going on with him. Every single time I saw Yondu in this movie, I was like, yes, because Yondu was an awesome character in this movie. He's probably my favorite character in this movie. I liked him, but this movie focused so heavily on its villain when in a lot of the other Marvel movies, they haven't done that. Like, Civil War, the villain wasn't the focus. The Avengers were, and that's why it was so good. Deadpool, the villain was not the focus in Deadpool. Deadpool was the focus, and that's what made it really good. But then movies like this movie, the freaking villain is the primary focus, and we get way too many scenes with him that at the end of the movie you're just like, yeah. So that's ultimately why I did not like this movie. It was superhero movie cliche, as it was as cliche as it could have been. Same thing we've already seen a bunch of times. Evil guy with all the powers trying to take over the universe, and they didn't do a very good job with it in this movie, in my opinion. So, if I had to rate this movie, I mean, this isn't really a review, but I mean, it sort of is a review, it's more my thoughts. I'd give this movie a 6 out of 10. It's average. It's not terrible, but it's average. It's not as bad as other movies like, I don't know, like The Amazing Spider-Man 2. But I feel like this movie is one of those types of movies where a lot of Marvel fans are going to defend this movie because they're hardcore fans and they're going to defend this movie a lot because they fucking love Marvel. But I feel like down the road, they're going to look back at this movie and they're going to sort of feel the same way I did. I mean, not everyone's going to be like that. I mean, some people are I know people that are, there are people that are just impressed with everything and, enjoy everything. But true fans, I guess like me, if they like the movie initially, then what's probably going to happen is they're going to look back and they're going to notice that Guardians of the Galaxy 2 wasn't that great. And the only reason why the people that liked it, like are liking it right now, liked it initially is because they didn't want to dislike this movie. They want to like it because it's Guardians and they were really excited to see it. It's just sometimes it takes people longer to realize that that movie they were really excited to see and that they enjoyed watching the first time really is not that good. So, those are my thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy 2. It's not an awful movie, but it's not amazing either. So, I hope I gave my opinions. My opinions were legit and they weren't like just hater. Like, I didn't sound like a hater or anything like that. So, yeah, if you guys enjoyed this, please comment, rate, subscribe, and I will see you guys later. Peace.